Veterans Commission. We were in the Southfield Public Library. The day is January 16, 2008. We will be interviewing Mr. Alexander Jefferson for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Present in the room is Ms. Pat Beck from the Detroit Free Press, Mr. William Burnett from the Southfield Veterans Commission, Ms. Ethel Grossman from the Southfield Veterans Commission, Mr. Greg Pulliam from the Southfield Veterans Commission, Mr. Tim Workers, who is our photographer, also of the Southfield Veterans Commission. And so, Mr. Jefferson, give us a background on where you were born and when. Okay.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
Alexander Jefferson, Lieutenant Colonel, retired USAF. Born in Detroit, Michigan, November 15, 1921. Attended Chadsey High School in Detroit. Grew up on, oh, by the way, lived at 28th and Michigan Avenue in Detroit. The only black family in a Polish neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
So I was a nerd.
Oh, okay.
Newberry School, Condon Intermediate on Buchanan and the Boulevard, West Grand Boulevard.
Okay.
My mother, in the 7th grade, my mother wanted me to have a college education, and Condon did not offer Latin, so she raised all kinds of sand and transferred me to Munger, which was next to Chadsey High School on Martin and McGraw. I attended Munger for the 7th and 8th grades and went to Chadsey for the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Therefore, I had 3.5 years of Latin and a college preparatory course. Went to Clark College, Atlanta, Georgia. My mother was a graduate of Clark. She came out of Clark in 1910 with a degree in pedagogy. Bingo. Everybody said, what in the hell is pedagogy? Science of teaching. She was a school teacher until she married my dad, and they came up to Detroit. My dad just got out of South Carolina, circumstances that he never explained, and he was a laborer. He worked at a factory on Marquette and Trumbull in Detroit, a Detroit lubricator, a factory made, controlled by the man who discovered the lubricator for locomotives, McCoy. It was called the Detroit lubricator. My dad was a laborer, hard physical labor. One day, I was flunking high school, literally. I had taken his lunch one day in July. When I got there, he told me my dad was out in the foundry and he was stripped to his waist, pouring hot aluminum, making carburetors. Temperatures about 120, 130. I said, Lord, you let me get out of this place and I'll never get in the foundry again. I went back to school and started making A's and B's in chemistry and biology. Finished Chadsey in 1942, and I wanted to fly. Quite naturally, at that time, blacks did not fly. Negroes at that time, we were colored. Let me back up. Shall I go through how we got into the Army Aircorps?
Yeah, just tell me what were you doing before you went into the service and how you got into the service.
4 years at Clark College, majored in chemistry and biology. Also put in, I minored in physics and math. Put in a year at Howard University in organic chemistry before I went into the Army Aircorps. But,
did you have any other family members who had been in the military?
No family members. I have an uncle. An uncle in World War I. No, two. Two in World War I. In fact, Charles was a member of the cavalry. I don't know exactly what number, but all I remember him in his cavalry breeches. But that's about it. Nobody else was in the Army that I know of.
Okay. And how did you actually enter the service? Volunteer, drafted?
Volunteer.
Okay.
Because If I had been drafted, I would make $21 a month, sleeping on the ground, dodging behind trees, and being black, I would have gone to the quartermaster. Heavy, nasty, dirty work.
Okay.
But I wanted to fly
Okay.
because I've been putting together model airplanes, and of course I knew that as a cadet, I'd make $75 a month.
Okay.
And after 9 months, you become a second lieutenant, make $150 a month, plus 75. So with the gold bar, and the wings, and the money, and all the pretty girls, which would you take? No, but that makes sense.
So that was your impetus for enlisting, and this was during the war?
Volunteer.
Volunteer, okay.
Well, of course, I had to go down to the federal building in Detroit, took the exam, and the limit was 116 pounds. I weighed 115 and 2 or 3 ounces. The guy said, go downstairs and drink some water. And when they got upstairs and got on the scale, it was 116 and 1 ounce. That's how I made it.
Okay, all right.
But I was skinny. Going to college, I think I weighed 90 pounds, dripping wet. But at least I survived.
Right, so you passed the exam, and what was next?
Then they told me to go home. I thought I was going to go down to Tuskegee Army Airfield and go into the cadets. But they told me to go home and wait. That's why I went to Howard University for a year.
Okay.
And after, in April '43, I got a letter that said, come to Tuskegee Army Airfield. That's when I entered the training at Tuskegee.
Okay. How did you get to Tuskegee? By way of
train.
Okay.
And the old Southern way, you go from Detroit to Cincinnati, change the L and N, and you get to that coach right behind the coal-bearing car with all the nasty soot odor, segregation, discrimination. But you see, I've been through that, so to me it didn't make any difference. I knew how to cope with it.
Sure. Okay, so you were on the train going to Tuskegee. So when you arrived at Tuskegee, what happened to start there?
Same old thing. You always arrive at Tuskegee to make an arrangement. You arrive at Cheahaw. Cheahaw is a little station about 10 miles away from Tuskegee Army Air Base. And you always arrive at night. Psychologically, they hit you. And 10:30, 11 o'clock, you're dumped off with 5 or 6 other guys at this little joint.